footprint of humankind. And you must be aware, because you are talking about farming, the footprint as far as insects are concerned, there are estimates which range from 60 to 70%. More than 30 to 40% of the insect species have been eliminated. Over farming in the seas is a matter of serious concern. Lack of water is an increasing concern. So therefore, how can nations spend trillions of dollars in wars and there's world food hunger which is around? So there needs to be a paradigm shift in priorities. It seems as disaster and the available signs of disaster are still not able to drag the politicians of the world towards peace and towards ensuring that there's food security. Today, they're still revolving on defense security, but without food security, Pakistan or the Muslim world, the Organization of Islamic Countries, is under tremendous stress. So having said this, I am a serious worrier as far as that, but then you have your own circle of concerns and your circle of efficacy, which is much smaller. My concern goes up to Palestine, goes up to broader areas, but my circle of efficacy remains Pakistan. And therefore, it is matter of serious concern to me that the population of Pakistan, the way it is increasing, we have to be able to feed them. That's a separate wheel where we are thinking of trying to handle that, to increase the mother-child health by reducing the frequency of pregnancies, which is a burden on the mother, the neonatal deaths, the poor health, and stunting. And stunting is because the children are not being fed well. 40% of Pakistan is suffering a stunted growth. So 40% of people sitting here must have been affected. And this effect is not transient. There are effects of food, for example, on skeletal growth. But there's a catch-up phenomenon that as soon as better food is available, as long as it is in the growing ages, even between 12 and 16, there's a catch-up phenomenon where it is overcome. But stunting in the brain is never overcome. It is a cause of malnutrition, less nutrition in the first 1,000 days, starting from the conception. So all this is because there's less food available on the table, there are less nutrients available on the table. So what practical steps do you need to take? Pakistanis first, then my Muslim brothers also. We follow each other's example, but Pakistanis first. What practical steps can you take? The best, which we started thinking about probably a few decades ago, is water. To be able to manage water, which comes to Pakistan probably approximately 150 million acre feet. And some of this goes down in the form of rivers, and some of it goes subterranean, in which Punjab prospered with tube well when it took out 12 million acre feet of water going subterranean. That was also important, that is important, but it led to more sodic soil in Punjab itself. So there are concerns. Everything you overexploit, you reduce the aquifers in the country. That's what happened in the desert countries. Some countries where there are more deserts, they decided to take out water from the aquifers and develop farms. But that led to reduction of aquifers, something which has been there for accumulating some millions of years. So in Balochistan, what we are trying to do, we are trying to recharge these aquifers with small dams, with small sandy dams, to be able to do that, to ensure the fact water is a scarcity. Water you cannot transport thousands of miles in a new manner. So if the rivers are there, fine. Otherwise, it's very difficult to transport water. They predict there will be wars on water. But what I would say, is try and handle our 150 million acre feet of water in a better manner. So the governments over the past few years have been looking at developing dams to be able to store water, to be able to control water. Water will still go out to the sea, because sometimes there is a mismatched thinking which says that there should not be a drop of water going into the sea. But there is a whole ecological situation where water needs to go into the sea also. So in Pakistan, what is the need of the sea? I don't know, because there are a number of studies which have been done which talk about between 2 to 8 million acre feet as a steady stream going to the sea. I'm not really, it's a debatable point. But at the same time, we should be able to manage floods. We should be able to conserve the flood water to feed. But then on, what happens? Now you have water, you manage water. What then happens? You should be using, rather than flood irrigation, which is a concept which has been traditionally used over centuries and over thousands of years, which is fine as long as there was enough water. But flood irrigation means giving water 5 feet down into the soil and having 6 inches of water about 500 meters beyond this. So therefore, ensuring the fact that we have drip irrigation or spray irrigation. And these concepts are of course expensive, but there are government programs which have ensured easily available systems in which the government subsidizes, I don't know with what exact figure, but up to 50% and sometimes more than 50%. That these need to be encouraged. But there's an information barrier gap between the farmer and the technologists, for which you bring in apps and artificial intelligence, and the government itself. The farmer doesn't believe what is said. The farmer believes in seeing the neighbor's crop more green than his, and it takes him the next season. He adopts those strategies. So what is affecting Pakistan beyond that? You see, I talked about the fact that conservative irrigation procedures, lining of the canals have been done, but what else? What else comes then? The farmer then needs the seed. There is unfair distribution of water, keep that in mind. The people at the tail of the canal, be it rivers in the country, be it canals within the district, the people in the tails are not fed water. Water is unpriced almost. So therefore, the fact that it should be conserved is not being talked about as much. So there must be some system, not of exploiting it, but some pricing to encourage the farmer to ensure the fact that he conserves water, he doesn't waste. Very important. It's a psychological issue which must be handled. So beyond that, then when he has the water, the problem is the seed in Pakistan is relatively unreliable. Why? Because some of the universities which were supposed to do a lot of good work did not produce good seed or released immature seed in the market. Seed takes sometimes 5, 6, 7, 8 years to mature. And universities doing some research, in 2 or 3 years they would release seed, and there's a confusion in the seed market, and that is where the government has pushed for seed bills to ensure the fact that there's good seed available. Then beyond that again, the genetically modified seed, what is our attitude towards it? Tomorrow, everything is happening from preventing human diseases to increasing longevity, to increasing the food yields, to making sure that dependence on meat should move over to a protein substitute of meat. Everything is being done by some genetic modification. Genetic modification was a research-oriented thing which humankind always did. Mixing of crops, humankind always did. By accident or by special circumstance, some seeds were developed. But that takes years and years. And now science gives the opportunity how ethical it is, how much acceptance there is in society of genetically modified seed. But we need assistance, scientific assistance in that area as well. And we need ability of the people to accept that if there is a verdict among all you scientists that it is something which can happen. But human mind is a very strange thing. Today there are anti-vaxxers. I don't know whether, there's always one or two anti-vaxxers in every meeting, there must be one or two here. But there are anti-vaxxers who do not believe the fact that vaccines are good. But anyhow, if the majority believes in something, it will come. So when I talk about the seeds, then at the same time you talk about diseases in crops. A natural way of holding disease away also comes from some form of genetic understanding, on maybe not genetic engineering, but giving that ability to some insects or to some microbial contents in the soil which can develop plant resistance to diseases. Otherwise, that will be a continuous battle between disease and a good crop. There are other areas where tremendous yield is possible. The sea is full of possibilities. And when I was a member of the National Assembly, we talked about devastation of the coast of Pakistan, where we farmed fish with very thin nets. Even a pencil couldn't go through. So all the future generations of the fish were caught into these nets. And while we ate the bigger fish, the smaller fish went into poultry, chicken feed, and other feeds. So we destroyed, in fact, it says probably 20 to 30% of the fish stock is not recoverable. And we discharge at the same time 500 million gallons of sewage off the coast of Karachi per day. So our concerns are vast. It is not a single issue of increasing making Pakistan and the Ummah secure in food should be the biggest priority we have. So therefore, I was reading recently that seaweed farms, including kelp farming, is possible. It is possible by mixing water from the bottom, which is resource rich with nutrients, and at the top, at the level where the seaweed farm will be there, at the top, bringing it to the top, to that, because stratification of water with global warming is more and more. Warm water is more warm at the top, and the nutrient-rich water stays below. So some form of kelp farming in the seaweed farm, that's a huge resource, but we shouldn't spoil it. At the same time, land is a resource. You see, when I talked about water, land is also a resource which is shrinking. As I came here to meet you people, the plane took me over to vast areas of land development where farms used to be. Vast areas. There's still no houses there, but you see that there is no agriculture. There is a road structure which is coming up, but vast areas, hundreds and thousands of acres going into residency. So therefore, there is lack of land availability, and this government has made a good step towards reducing that by encouraging vertical housing rather than going horizontal. But that's also the future. You see, governments have to look at everything which is possible, not only directly to the farmer, but allowing the farmer to have some land. Otherwise, we'll have to go into some vertical farming. I have heard, I have not seen it, but around Rawalpindi and Islamabad, there has been one or two farms which have been set up, which is hydroponic farming. No earth, but at the same time nutrient-rich water and LED lights to encourage the photosynthesis and the ability. In future, there are vertical farms, for example, in California, which are producing millions of tons of tomato every year, and it is cropped by robotic arms. It is fed only by water and nutrient soils. And there are cameras, of course, the direction in which Mr. Khalid Mahmood, Dr. Khalid Mahmood and others want us to go also, is the understanding every plant can be looked at by some sensor to look at the health, and in future, the ability to understand the nutrient situation of that plant particularly. That's all possible. Doesn't have to be a sensor close to every plant, that just needs a photograph and the interpretation of those photographs in some way or the other. So when I talked about vertical farming, hydroponic farming, there must be in Pakistan crop substitution, understanding of crop substitution, the fact that we cannot afford to grow some crops which are highly water demanding. For example, sugar cane has been controlled in some areas to ensure the fact that there is water for other farms to, there. So crop substitution, and the fact that we may not be able to produce some crops which require a lot of water, allow other countries to produce the crops, but we can substitute those crops in some manner. So ladies and gentlemen, having talked about this, then look at better yielding strains. CRISPR technology, for example, and gene editing can do wonders. At the same time, there is global warming, and methane production by animals and cows is a serious danger there also. Therefore, meat substitution is possible. Therefore, cruelty of humankind must also reduce. You are eating the meat generally, not in Pakistan yet, but throughout the world you are eating the meat which has been very cruelly farmed, very much against nature. The mother is deprived of the young, cannot express. Cows are grown in very strict, between very strict walls, they can't move. It's a misery for animals. So I think methane, maybe vegan eating or maybe vegetarian is the probable situation for the future. But having mentioned all these problems, I am confident that science will bring some solutions. But before that confidence comes, I need to have confidence that world politicians are agreeable to stop creating their problems and coming towards solutions. Stop creating the problems in the world today. Stop fighting. So Lihaza, therefore, encouraging the fact that we must fight hunger rather than humankind to ensure food security. Now, having said all that, I am very hopeful of the cooperation which has been encouraged between Comstack and Savi and Upsign. I think the solutions will come from every direction. I met a company in Dubai who was talking of bringing technology and improving farmer communication. There are, like you mentioned, there are 8 million farmers here with, on an average, the farm size about 5 acres, but there are 8 million farmers. The ability to reach out to them with the increasing communication technologies available is something which is very important, and we can do something. The way we handle COVID, the messaging to every individual, so therefore the messaging to every farmer, depending on his area, depending on geo pointing the fact that which farmer is where, to be able to give him good advice, what to sow, what to use, and the dangers regarding pest in that area. All this has a great probability. In fact, I have encouraged the Minister of Food Security to look at, rethink the imagery which is available in Pakistan through Suparco. Of course, there is a collaboration, but I believe there is tremendous ability to look at satellite images more and more under different spectrums of infrared and whatever spectrums are there, to look at it, to understand what is happening, to be able to predict it, and to increase cooperation in all these areas to have a better crop and understanding of what is available and what is not available, or if you're going to have a yield crisis. To increase our yields is very important, like right across in India, I believe they are twice as productive per hectare as far as cotton is concerned, or other crops are concerned. In some areas, twice as productive. In some areas, Pakistan is gives 1/5 of the production. So that means the know-how is available. It needs to be applied. Of course, there's an expensive cost of bringing in newer technologies, but at the same time, it can be done. Now, the cooperation between the Muslim countries, we must cooperate in whatever one country has achieved to be able to share it. Agriculture practices, the winning experiences in one area can be shared in other areas, but you see, the slowness of the old book, brick and mortar system. Book, brick and mortar system is too slow. It has to be faster than that. And let me encourage you, for example, resources of education can be shared. And I am very passionate about one university in Pakistan which is called the Virtual University. And I was very impressed by the fact that since I came and I started taking interest, they have responded to that. From 28,000 graduates admissions they took in 1 year, in 2017 or 18, they've gone up to 48,000 admissions, out of which 8,000 are from outside Pakistan. So if there are universities in Pakistan able to share information and they give out bachelor's degrees recognized by Higher Education Commission, so the ability of us and for them to increase their numbers from the present 48,000 to 100,000 is just a matter of churning out more software and probably increasing only about 4 or 5% in their administrative costs. But at the same time, even today in Pakistan, it is the cheapest, least costly bachelor's program of 4 years available. It costs 130,000, for example, for a full 4-year bachelor's program, which is recognized by the Higher Education Commission. So there are opportunities of expanding learning. You see, in Pakistan, for example, I just give you one example. In Pakistan, for example, those who go out of intermediate and go to higher education, they're only 9 or 10%. But in India, that number goes up to 24%. That means we can't increase the universities so fast. Brick and mortar takes a long time. But virtual encouragement with cheaper education, people can work and learn. Virtual learning can be done at night. And there are 15% of those students who work and are in the program as well. So they're earning, but they're also in the program. So therefore, that kind of cooperation I would like to encourage between the ComStack countries, so that we should be able to exchange. There is no time to exchange teachers now. It's too expensive. It takes, for creating a PhD somewhere and then his input into that country, that entire cycle takes about 10 years. That is so slow. That is too slow. So what I would like to encourage, particularly ComStack, is a virtual, a hybrid cooperation between all Islamic countries to further its own issues, to solve its own issues, because sometimes technology will not be easily shared by the first world with us. That is true in commercial technologies, but it is true in every technology. Whatever we learn or whatever we can understand, what is available in open source, we must magnify it and make sure that our children, we must have the human resource to do this. You are too few spreading the right message. There must be many, many more. So therefore, living with this need before you, what I express, that's the need of Pakistan, that's the need of the Muslim Ummah. There are many problems which require a multi-dimensional approach. Sometimes we can get stuck in a narrow approach, but I mentioned to you, as you are important thinkers of Pakistan and from abroad, all of you, to dwell on the fact that it is not easy to progress, but if you make the right decisions at the right time, at the right decision at the right time, the world is open for you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.